Ladies and gentlemen, as the casket is being escorted to the grave, I'd like to kindly ask anybody with a cell phone to kindly shut it off or silence it for the duration of the service. You got it?
So thank you for being here today as we pay tribute to and celebrate Ethel's life. I'm going to begin with the words of Psalm 23 in Hebrew and in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Bin odesha yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinachaleni. Nafshi yeshovei. Yancheni b'magalei tzedek, lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech b'geit salmavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Aroch lefanai sholcha neget sodarai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Achto v'chesed, yirdafuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'beit Adonai la'orach yamin. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me to lie down in green pastures, you lead me beside still waters, you restore my soul. You guide me on the paths of righteousness for the sake of your glory. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me, even in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We are assembled with our friends and our family in the darkness that has fallen upon them. We raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for comfort and strength. We need light when gloom darkens our lives. We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. May we find these in God, who preserves from destruction all that is good. Let us find them too in loved ones and companions who do God's work by binding up the wounds of the stricken. Who among us has not passed through trials and bereavements? Some bear fresh wounds in their hearts and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others whose days of mourning are more remote still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their sorrowing hearts. May our sharing of sorrow and our presence today and in the days to come bring comfort to all the loved ones of Ethel Alton. God has not promised skies always blue, flower-strewn pathways all our lives through. God has not promised sun without rain, joy without sorrow, peace without pain. But God has promised strength for the day, rest for the labor, light for the way, grace for the trials, help from above, unfailing sympathy, undying love. Some 3,000 years ago, King Solomon wrote these words, never knowing that they would be put to popular music and become major hits in the rock and roll world. But the original lyrics do appear in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes. And those original lyrics, as I said, belong to King Solomon, who wrote in Hebrew, although I'll read it in English. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot that which is planted. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. a time to keep silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. We are here, of course, today celebrating the life of a remarkable woman, and I'd like to read these words from another remarkable Jewish woman who sadly was not blessed with the quantity of years that Ethel was. Her name was Hannah Senesh, and she was a heroic Jewish paratrooper in World War II, captured and tortured by the Nazis, but she would not give up the name of any of those who were collaborating with her against the Nazis. Some of you know her as the author of the famous poem and song Eli, Eli, which is widely sung in Jewish venues. She also wrote these words called Yesh Kochavim. There are stars. There are stars up above, so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with those whom we loved. Their memory keeps shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. O God of comfort, shield us with your love and your kindness. Help us to know that time does heal, and grief will yield its final grip. May the memory of Ethel Altman strengthen our lives and guide us always in ways of goodness. God of compassion, be with us now and grant us peace. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem b'tzalmo, v'zan v'chilkel etchem b'tuvo, v'heimit etchem badin, v'nata b'tochachem chaye olam. Baruch atah Adonai, Dayan ha'emet. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe. You form us in your image. You nourish and sustain us in your goodness. You have created death, yet you have implanted within us eternal life. Blessed are you, O Lord, the true judge. I know that everybody here undoubtedly has a wealth of stories and memories about Ethel. And there will be time immediately following the service and in the weeks and months and years to come to relay many of those stories. But today we're going to hear from Ethel's 3 children. We're going to share some of their thoughts and memories, beginning with Evan.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. It means a lot to all of us. I know it meant the world to Mom, as it does mean the world to us as well. I also want to thank Ed and Carolyn for assisting and smoothing the rough edges in my little talk today. I'm going to try to get through this, not tap out. So. Her name is Ethel. Like Ethel in ethyl alcohol, associated with cocktails and cheer, is also associated with cleanliness and sanitizing, leading to neatness, organization, and order. An apt description of our mom, Ethel. As a kid, when she made our school lunches in elementary and middle school, my favorites were Hebrew National salami or bologna sandwiches on wheat bread. I have some friends here that would attest to that. The halves of which she wrapped up individually in wax paper, slid into a brown bag, neatly folded the top, stapled, and then wrote my name in dark magic marker. She often included tomatoes and cut up vegetables, a salad for a 7-year-old. This made my lunch a target by other kids with less well-wrapped lunches of peanut butter and jelly soaking through the white bread in a baggie with maybe an apple and maybe a couple of cookies. I would try to trade my salad for an Oreo, but no takers. Surprise. Later I realized Mom put her love into our lunches, only the best for her cups. Mom thrived on order, organization, and cleanliness, and modeled these qualities all of her life. She set an extremely high bar. Although her intention was to help us navigate life's challenges, I admit I only attained the level of advanced beginner in neatness compared to her. I think Carol and Ed may have me beat. I know for sure they do have me beat. Mom grew up during the Depression and in a sometimes unstable family setting. This drove her to be the glue that kept our family together. In good times and lesser good times, she was a devoted daughter and later the main caregiver to her father, Max, her mother, Mama Mia, her mother-in-law, Bertha, and ultimately Dad, especially during his final years. Given the chance in life, Mom could have been and should have been a physician. She used to say that a lot. No question, she was a great diagnostician, especially on herself. She clearly had the brain power for professional greatness, and if her life circumstances were different, that is the path she probably would have taken. She was a great mother and not afraid of discipline through today what we might call open and direct communication. Cursing was not tolerated. They raised us by example. They expected a lot out of us, and most importantly, wanted us to be good people, thankful for what we had, respectful, good-natured, and reliable. As in all marriages, there was the occasional skirmish between Mom and Dad. But to us, it was always a united front. A punishment from Dad could not be plea bargained with Mom, and vice versa. Any attempts to manipulate favor were few. Mom encouraged us to figure things out for ourselves, except for laundry and dishwashing, which she knew we could not meet her standards. She always encouraged us to continue challenging ourselves, a course of action proven to be timeless. She had a great sense of humor. Letters to us at camp or in college were well written, intelligently sarcastic, and full of colorful descriptions of the goings-on at home. She enjoyed good jokes, off-color or clean. She enjoyed telling jokes as well. She couldn't pull them off quite as well as Dad, but I heard a good one I always made sure to tell her during one of our phone calls, and she had a few for me as well. Help me with my repertoire. Politically, we couldn't have been further apart. It confused her that growing up in her home, or our home, I could think the way I did. There was nothing wrong or immoral about my stance on issues, we just disagreed. I told her she should be proud that all of her kids have their own mind and opinions. That was the result of being good parents. I don't know if that made her feel any better, especially when certain politicians' names were mentioned, but now that I can have the last word, I'll just say this. Mom, I love you very much, I always love you very much, but you were wrong. Though I don't think she ever understood why I became an FBI agent, I think she was proud anyway. I heard several times that Jewish boys shouldn't carry guns unless they're Israelis. But she was incredibly supportive. She and Mama Mia came to my graduation at Quantico in 1983. We had a great, memorable time. Once Dad passed, Mom could have become withdrawn, but that was not her style. She continued as concert mistress of Sarasota Mandolin Orchestra, attended all the theater, concert, and museum events that she could, and supported many causes. She had an active social life just about until the end, a life to be admired. A good example of the friends she had were two neighbors who adopted her, Ed and Elizabeth Wolkin and Dave and Marilyn Coker. Because Ed, Karen, and I lived out of the state, the Wolkins and Cokers were a lifeline of support, friendship, and crucial updates for us. We couldn't be more grateful for all they did, which they always swear was because they loved her. Not because of an obligation. We are eternally grateful to them. At the end, she died as she wanted to, peacefully at home, in her own bed, with family and friends around her. She very much loved all her grandkids, her two daughters-in-law, Vern and Lori, and Suzanne, her one daughter, Outlaw. We are going to miss Mom very much, but now with Dad, Mama Mia, and all her other relatives in heaven, she will continue to watch over us and provide guidance. Mom, you're the end of an era. Until we meet again, we love you.
There's not much I can add to what Evan said, but I'd like to comment on her final years. As a middle-aged child, having your mom still around when you're 60 is a gift. She went from being my mother to a friend, an anchor, my biggest fan. It makes the loss that much sharper. I have to stop myself from calling with a story I think she'd like. She showed us how to die with grace, acceptance, and in peace. As her strength diminished, she never complained or expressed any traces of self-pity or fear. The consummate organizer, she knew where everything was, an insurance policy, a medical record, a cucumber. She knew where it belonged. When we arranged for in-house care, I told the agency she'd be the easiest case they have. She knows where everything is, exactly what she wants, when she wants it, how she doesn't want it. She didn't want to play cards. She didn't want to chat. She wasn't bored. You just had to listen to directions, ask questions, and follow through. Remarkably, the aides loved her, and one of them even cleaned out the garage. But because she seemed so alert and capable, and looked much younger than her 91 years, we often took her endurance for granted and missed signs that she needed more help. Her local friends and neighbors, as Evan mentioned, particularly Ed and Elizabeth Wolken, Joe Florsheimer, Dave and Marilyn Coker, were our eyes and ears in Florida. They visited with her, brought snacks and treats, and kept us informed about things we couldn't see from New York and Atlanta. Without them, Mom's last years would have been far more difficult. Despite the pandemic, her friends made sure she wasn't lonely, and we can't fully express our gratitude. It's very hard to believe she's no longer a phone call or a flight away.
Mom would have hated the weather today. I recently overheard one of the home care workers explain to the other how my mother liked her laundry done. She likes it hung on this rack here. She does not dry these things. She hangs them on the rack to dry. These other things she dries for 10 minutes, then hangs them. These other things she just dries. The other asked, dry? Yes, she said, dry. She took very good care of her clothes, her house, and all of its systems, and especially took care of her family. She was a good friend, she enjoyed our friends, and made new friendships throughout her life. Both of our parents were very encouraging of all of us to play musical instruments and encouraging and supportive of Ed's acting talent. They came to every concert, play, and musical, and even the dance band. We went to all of my father's plays. Eventually, we were able to enjoy my mother's performances in the Sarasota Mandolin Orchestra. More recently, during the pandemic, my mother continued to watch Ed's performances and my Zoom concerts and give us honest critiques. She said, I think you might try sitting so the sunlight shines on your face and maybe wear a little makeup. But generally, her commentary on the performance was direct and accurate. Relationship was very important to my mother. When I came out to my parents in 1985, it was a rocky time. We saw less of each other, and when we spoke, it was stressful. Once Ethel realized I was the same daughter, gay or straight, things got easier. It doesn't sound so innovative these days, but coming out in the 80s was different than today. Ethel found PFLAG and became an active member. She had to come out herself and did so with grace and zeal. She helped other families find acceptance. I've always been grateful for how my mother managed her relationship with Mama Mia. As troublesome as things could be with Mama Mia, my mother never let that interfere with the relationship that her mother could have with her three children. She encouraged and facilitated a strong bond between us. My mother knew how to enjoy life. She knew how to laugh at herself. She enjoyed her adventures and escapades with my father. She loved connecting with friends and family and grandchildren. She always listened to music and radio. She loved the arts. She loved chocolate, a good meal, a good book, a good movie, and she really enjoyed a good cup of tea and a cookie.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, quote, character building begins in our infancy and continues until our death. She understood that a successful life is usually not the result of circumstance, but rather attention to a predetermined plan and meticulous organization. Ethel Altman always believed in character building, for herself, her family, and for all those around her. She felt that there was a proper way for most things to be done, and she took pride in not simply seeking a path, but rather the proper path, the best path. Ethel grew up with her younger brother Wallace during the difficult days of the Great Depression in Brooklyn and in Jersey City. She was blessed with a mom who was a true inspiration to her and from whom she learned a great deal. Family was a constant, but there was tremendous volatility. Sometimes Ethel's family lived with others, and sometimes other family lived with Ethel's family. She was a graduate of Walton High School in the Bronx and attended Hunter College for a short time. Prior to getting married, Ethel worked in doctor's offices, and as we heard, she always had a keen interest in medicine. She was extremely fastidious and organized, being able to work as an executive secretary for Volkswagen. She and her beloved Marvin met, and I know this is the truth because she told it to me a number of years ago, met at the Young Senior League of Central Synagogue. They saw each other from across the room, but Ethel told me that Marvin was actually a bit shy back then, and he asked his friend to ask Ethel if she would like to meet him. Fortunately, Ethel answered yes to this question, as she did a month later when Marvin proposed. Her mom was thrilled, being of the opinion that Marvin was a really good catch. Ethel and Marvin were married within a year, and their loving and devoted marriage spanned 54 years. After several years in Kew Gardens, they moved to the Norshawn neighborhood of Pearl River, where they built a house and spent the next 40 years. Even though Ethel had her definite opinions about how things should be done, she and Marvin always worked together when it came to important decisions for the family. She was a strict but loving mom to her three beloved children, Evan, Ed, and Carolyn. She was affectionate and always looking out for them. She served as a class parent, was involved with the PTA, and also, I'm told, she was a great cook and baker. Along with other creations, she will be remembered for her meatloaf, chocolate chip sour cream cake, and oven cookies. However, her everyday meals were also both delicious and, unfortunately for some of her children, nutritious. Salad and steamed vegetables were constants on the table. Ethel felt it was important to instill responsibility in her kids, as well as manners, class, ethics, and gratitude. And she was a wonderful role model to teach all of these character traits. She was also always perfectly groomed. She spoke beautifully and was a true community leader in helping so many families come to support their gay and lesbian children. Back at a time, as Carolyn noted, when this was a largely hidden subject. It may be tough for those of you who are younger to realize that today, when one's gender preference is very open. 30, 40 years ago, this was kind of like teenage pregnancy in the 50s. Nobody talked about it. Marvin and Ethel were founding members of Beth Am Temple. Ethel was involved in many areas of the temple and made a big impact as sisterhood president, this being a role which helped her to make many friendships over the years. She was also politically active with Harriet Cornell and the Rockland Democratic Party. An outspoken feminist, she became a strong gay rights advocate, helping many families to actively support their gay and lesbian children. She was close with her daughters-in-law, Lori, Bernadette, and Suzanne, and she was truly the glue that kept the family strong. She was a loving nana to Sam, Juliana, Hannah, Henry, and Leo, and loved to hear everything that was going on in their lives. Marvin and Ethel moved to Florida, and they were involved in Temple Sinai in Sarasota, and they enjoyed their life and their home in Sarasota very much. As Marvin's health declined, Ethel helped to provide wonderful, constant, loving care for him. Her love of the mandolin came from her father, who taught her to play when she was very young. Later in life, Ethel used to play mandolin in nursing homes and at restaurants. She also enjoyed reading and writing. As you all know, she was a striking woman at every stage of her life. She did modeling, plus worked as an extra in some films. She always watched what she ate and focused on a healthy diet for herself and her family. Ethel was a good friend to so many people. She loved celebrating Jewish holidays with family at home and at temple, and always honored the memory of her departed loved ones' yahrzeits. Though her health was failing, Ethel knew of Riley entering the family, and that made her very happy, because family meant everything to Ethel, and she took enormous pride in the family which she and Marvin were able to build together. It has been said, quote, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give," end quote. Ethel was constantly giving of herself, her wisdom, her ideals, her activism, and her energy. She was a person who actively lived every day of her life, and she made a very positive difference in our world. By taking those ideals and Ethel's commitment to each person living up to their potential, all of us can help to ensure that the name, the memory, and the spirit of Ethel Altman will continue to live on in our world, now and always, as a blessing. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to invite you all, if you're able, to please rise for the two closing blessings. Yes, you do so. I'm going to hand out copies of the card. Front of the aisle. I'm just going to, if you want, please take one and pass it along, and if you don't want, please just pass it along. This will be the second prayer. So first, I'm going to be reciting the traditional El Malei Rachamim prayer, a prayer which asks God to watch over Ethel's soul. And after I've completed that prayer in Hebrew and in English, we'll introduce the Kaddish, which many of you are receiving. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bam Romim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanpei Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utahorin Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Ethel Shendel Bat Menachem Mendel, Shehalcha Le'olamah, V'gam Eden Tehei Menuchatah, Ana Ba'al Harachamim, Hasti Reha, V'seter Knafecha Le'olamim, V'yitzror V'tzror Chayim Et Nishmatah, Adonai Hu Nachalatah, V'tanuach B'shalom Al Mishkavah, V'nomar Amen. O God full of compassion, you who dwell on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Ethel Altman, who has departed from our world. Lord of mercy, bring her into your presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May you care for her always, and may her soul's rest be one of everlasting peace. And together we say, Amen. The Kaddish is the traditional Jewish prayer for the dead, and yet, in looking at the Kaddish and the text of the Kaddish, we notice that it doesn't say anything at all about death. It simply gives thanks and praise to God for the gift and blessing of life. And that is consistent with the Jewish approach of trying to see the glass as being half full rather than half empty. Even though we are here mourning Ethel's death after 91 years, truly we're here celebrating her life and the remarkable life that she built after starting out under less than ideal circumstances in a less than ideal time. She and Marvin were able to just build a beautiful life, beautiful family, and there's so much that I know all of you are able to be grateful for, and that's what you're going to be reminiscing about for many, many days and weeks and beyond. And so while it would have been wonderful to have more time with her, she was truly blessed with quantity and quality of years. And for that, we give thanks to God, the source of all life, as we recite the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma tivra chirutei, v'amlich malchutei, v'chayecho v'yomecho, v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'bizman karev. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach v'alam v'omei almaya. Yitzarach, Yishabach, Yitzahar, Yitzamah, Yitzaseh, Yitzadar, Yitzaleh, Yitzalal, Shmei, Rihu, Elah, Min Kol, Birchata, Bashirata, Tushbechata, Benetamata, Ta'amiran, Ba'alma. Amen. Yehei, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, Chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael. Amen. Oseh Shalom Himramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And together we say, Amen.
Amen.